بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله عليكم جميعا, and welcome back to another show of From the Mind of a Mufti. You're listening to myself and watching myself, Abu Layth al-Maliki. There is a hadith which comes to mind from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that has been narrated by a companion, Jubair ibn Mut'im, where the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us that naddara Allahu imra'an, that may Allah enlighten an individual, sami'a maqalati, that who hears my words, فَوَعَاهَا, and then he comprehends what I've said, فَعَدَّاهَا كَمَا سَمِعَهَا, and then he goes on and conveys my words to somebody as he has heard them from me. And then the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that وَرُبَّ حَامِلِ فِقْهٍ لَا فِقْهَ لَهُ, and many a people who carry fiqh or knowledge, perhaps they don't actually have knowledge. وَرُبَّ حَامِلِ فِقْهٍ إِلَى مَنْ هُوَ أَفْقَهُ مِنْ, and many a people of knowledge, or many a people who carry knowledge, carry it to somebody who perhaps will be more knowledgeable than them. This hadith, apart from the amazing and intriguing detail that it has of knowledge and how sometimes there is a great distinction between just retaining information, or sometimes even retaining potential knowledge, and those that may actually actualize this potential. But leaving that aside for a moment, I'd like to concentrate on the understanding that this deen is a tradition that is conveyed. It is not something which is picked up from a book. Somebody does not just pick up a book and learn the deen from the book. In the hadith we learn that the Prophet ﷺ said, he said, Man sami'a maqalati, who heard it, fa'addaha, then he took it forward. وَرُبَّ حَامِلِ فِقْهٍ, later on, إِلَى مَنْ هُوَ أَفْقَهُ, many are people who possess a certain amount of knowledge are taking it to somebody more knowledgeable. In the Hajjatul Wada', فَلْيُبْلِغْ الشَّاهِدَ الْغَائِبِ, let he who is here present take it to the one who is absent. The great Imam Malik ibn Anas, Imam Dar al-Hijrah, has said that, he said, Inna hadha, when speaking of these things, of these traditions, he said, hadha al-ilm, this knowledge, these traditions, this is the deen. That he said, fa'alamu annahu deen, that no, this is the deen. فَانْظُرُوا أَمَّنْ تَأْخُذُونَ دِينَكُمْ, that this هذا العلم, this is deen. Be wary, be careful who you take your deen from. Once again emphasizing that the deen is actually an unbroken chain. So us today, in 2012, Islam has reached us. We have an understanding of Islam, but it is not just an understanding we've just picked up from a book and just try to, oh, is this what Islam is about? Naturally, we will always be enhancing our understandings and things through knowledge, through books. However, we have learnt from people who have learnt from people who have learnt from people, going right back to the Salaf, reaching Imam Malik, his teachers in Medina, their teachers the Sahaba, and then their teacher, the best of creation, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. This chain must not be forgotten, this tradition, because once we keep that in mind, we then start to understand that, okay, so what we are learning and trying to practice, this is what we call the Sunnah. It is the way of the Messenger. It is not necessarily restricted to the Hadith. And this is interesting because there have been many great ulama, many from amongst the Salaf, the likes of Imam Malik, who drew this distinction that there is hadith, which is that practice or that action of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or teaching which has been documented. And then there is the Sunnah, which is the way, which is the general way and the general teaching. Now, not every Sunnah was necessarily documented, and not every Hadith was necessarily the Sunnah. And this is a very interesting and extremely important differentiation that must be made. And unfortunately, some people don't make this distinction, and we see this when, for example, when the great Qadi Abu Yusuf, the major student of Abu Hanifa, when he turns up at Medina and he's with Imam Malik and he's going, and he tries to actually almost crack a little joke at Imam Malik when he hears the adhan, and he says to Imam Malik, "Oh, subhanallah, Ahlul Medina la ya'rifun al-adhan," that the people of Medina don't know the adhan. And this Qadi Iyad brings this whole narration in his Tartib al-Madarik. Imam Malik responds to him by saying, he says, "Amma adhanu yawmin wa layla fala adri." He says, as to the adhan of one day and one night, that maybe the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said somewhere when he's on a journey, he's going with people. He says, I don't know about that. That may be. However, he says, as to the adhan which was announced ala ru'us al-ashhad, upon in front of the masses 5 times a day, the children have taken from the fathers who have taken from the Messenger, then it is this one that you are hearing right now. So once again, just trying to come back to, wait a minute, so there is this understanding of the Sunnah, and then there are ahadith as well. Okay, now there is a huge overlap, just to clarify that, between, in fact, an absolute overlap between hadith and Sunnah. But it is not necessarily confined to each other. That's what I'm saying. That there are at times some Sunnah which were not documented as hadith, and sometimes there are some hadith which have not necessarily been the practice upon which the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam continued to teach, and upon the practice which his students, the great companions, and their students, the tabi'een, were found upon. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a greater understanding and awareness of these issues. I do believe these things are extremely important in order to get a more in-depth grasp of the Sharia, in the hope that we can, inshallah, understand what the deen is actually trying to say in our day and age, and to have a more clearer, a more pristine understanding, and then to convey that understanding, as the Messenger of Allah said, that فَأَدَّاهَا, then he took this to the other person. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of these people of fiqh. Ameen. Jazakumullah al-khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala.